All right, folks, this is Dane. First, my phone made a noise. First thing I'm going to do is clean up some of this debris field. This is what happens when you have 5 different things going on and you just go from one to the next. And you're a slob. I'm not going to say, I don't pick up after myself. Oh, I need to order some vacuum bags. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to clean up. And then I decided I had an option here. I could carve the braces on one of those 2 acoustic tops there that's underneath the back. Or I could sand this out and start the finishing process. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll bring you back after I clean up. All right, guys, I'm back. Yep, just to prove it's really me, here I am. All my wondrous fat, bald guy kindness. So I got the route for the control cavity in. I got, holes drilled, got the pickup cavity in there, got the neck pocket in, and also did inserts for the strap buttons instead of just screwing into the mahogany. Can be a little soft, so I thought inserts might be a plus. But I did want to show you, this is another one of those things where it's a one-off, but you can't do a decent looking control cavity without a template. I mean, maybe Ben, that guy. So basically, for the main cavity, it didn't have to be pretty. I just drilled a couple 1.25" holes through here, and then connected the dots and sanded it out a little bit and did the cavity. Then on the plate, it has to be a little more accurate. So I didn't have an 1.25" Forstner bit, or an 1.5" Forstner bit, excuse me. So I drilled it with 1.25". I cut the piece into 3 pieces. This was the size. I cut it 3 times. I made the middle piece 1.5" wide, and then I took the center of it and just drilled an 1.25" hole in it. Then I split that and spread it out to approximately the right length here. Then all I really had to concern myself with was the getting the 1.5" radiuses or 1.5" circle right on after the glue up, and just blended all that together. Then I was able to do the plate. I prefer to do the rip and the re-glue to make sure that my sides are accurate, parallel, all that. It's easier than trying to rough cut it out with a jigsaw and then, or however, drill holes in it and file it all back. And then I also made my cavity cover out of diamond plate. I used diamond plate on the Route 66 Strat, and I like that. So I made one for this one as well. I like it a lot. Yeah. So that much is done. The next urgent and pressing question is, am I the only one? I'm getting this stuff out of my way even though you can't see it. Am I the only one that saves like random pieces of, well, that's not even sandpaper. Random pieces of sandpaper and little bits of wood? Because you don't, as soon as you throw that, this is like the end cut off the sides of the acoustic guitar. What am I going to do with this stuff, Like I said, random pieces of sandpaper still. And am I the only one that suffers from this? I don't, in some cases you can make sanding sticks out of fingernail files, which I just saw another one laying here. Anyway, here. And you can cut the ends in nice shapes so you can get into corners you can't get into. Things like that, but there comes a point when it's like it's a hoarding issue and you just have to say goodbye. I'm not going to use you. Anyway, wait a second. I just found a piece of paper. This is only 320 though. This isn't too bad either. Glad I hung on to that. I like to, the holes that I don't have drilled yet are the bridge holes. And the reason I don't have bridge holes drilled yet is because I don't have my bridge. So I don't take chances on stuff like that, either for positioning layout-wise or for the diameter of the bushings. And but when I'm sanding out a guitar, I typically will sand my radiuses and get my radiuses, and I only used 1/8 inch radiuses. I believe that's what they have stock. I have a plan for this, but as my buddy Patrick over there across the pond knows, it's a JAG plan. And JAG plans have a lot to be desired. Anyway, let me get to the point. They don't call out what the actual radius is. They do draw a radius in the picture. Looks like a pretty small radius. So, but I don't know if it's an actual 1/8 radius, or if it's supposed to be 3/16. You know, I don't know what the stock instrument came with. But I'm pretty confident that 1/8 is just fine. And by the time I get done hand sanding, it's going to feel a little bigger than that. So anyway, I'd like to do the hand sanding before I do the flat sanding, okay? Because inevitably, this is especially important when you're doing a clear finish, because if you flat sand everything and then you come back, especially on your last time around, and you flat sand everything and then you come in and do your radius, inevitably you get a cross grain mark from this piece of paper somehow, even inadvertently. You don't think you're doing it, but you might get that, or you might get a fingernail dragging along the edge and leave a mark. So I like to do my edges first, okay? And I'm not going to make anybody suffer through a whole guitar sanding, even in fast forward. And so anyway, having said that, and that's 320, and this is getting paint. It's getting paint, it's getting grain filled. It's not something that's going to have to be sanded immaculately, to tell you the truth, because the paint will fill the small imperfections, especially after the grain fill is on and all that. So this is going to be TV yellow. I'm going to be following, and I'll get the book out and I'll show you. I'm going to be following the Stu Mack finishing book recipe. Dan Earlywine and Don McCroskey did this, and they did the formulas. And so I've read through that a couple times, and I'm going to get the book out again and go at it. I'm pretty sure the idea is to finish sanding the guitar. I will do that. I will finish sanding the guitar. I will raise the grain. I will finish sand it again. I'm not 100% sure that raising the grain is that important when you're not using a water-based product as your finish, and I'm not. I'm just going to go lacquer on this guy. Anyway, finish sand, raise the grain, finish sand again, and then go to a sanding sealer. I have a vinyl lacquer sanding sealer, and do that, and then spray the color, and then you fill the grain on the TV yellow according to the recipe. And that's always been my understanding of it. I've seen a lot of different ways, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. Just saying that's the way I want to try it, because I've been wanting to do this for years, and that was always the recipe I had in my head. What else? So then you put the grain fill. You get all that on, and rubbed off, sand out, whatever you have to do, and then you clear it. And so the reason I decided to do this before carving the tops for the acoustic guitars was because once this thing's got its 8-10 coats of clear on it, it's just going to live in the spray booth and cure for a month before I mess with it. I'm not painting the neck, which is not standard for an LPJ, with a TV yellow finish. I haven't even carved the neck, but the neck fits fine here. I'm going to go ahead and get this done and let it cure, and then I'll work on other stuff while that's happening. So the other thing that you might have noticed is that I chose to go with the original LPJ option, which was a full 10-inch set, but with a little bit of the body hanging out here on the right side. I mentioned before that on my previous LPJ that has the skull pattern fabric top finish, I cut it out like that and gave myself better access to the neck. I just, for whatever reason, I've been wanting to do this particular thing. Like I said before, I had this body, cut out and almost ready to go 3 years ago, but it was so heavy that I cut it in half and slit the top off of it and hollowed it all out. So now this body is, I know I said what it was in another video, and I'm not going to take the time to weigh it, but I think it's a couple pounds. It's really light. Could have something that's just slightly over 3 pounds total when this is done. Anyway, I'll go ahead and hand sand the rest of this. As far as the edges, I'll get a little film video of the sanding process, flat sanding. I don't know what the grit on this thing was. 220? Yeah, 220, which is what I want to use. This hand paper happens to be 320, but I'll 220 it, and then I'm gonna do the edges as well, the sides, and then I'll raise the grain, and then I'll do it again, but I'll do it with 320 the last time, and I'll probably just hand sand it everywhere, and call that good. And then vinyl sanding sealer. That's it. Okay, so got a very bright light in here, so this is going to look really washed out. So I got my bridge in, and I got my jack socket plate, so I drilled the holes for that, drilled the holes for the bridge. I've got this body connected to my, let's state this as plainly as possible. If you watch Texas Toast, you've seen something that spins like this and has the handle here that you can rotate the guitar. This is very handy. The guy that built theirs copied Jay Nelson. He has a YouTube channel. His name's Jay Nelson, and I've been watching him for a long time on Instagram. I didn't know his name, and when I found out he was on YouTube, I watch him on YouTube. I made my own out of copper. It's not quite as sexy as the one that Jay has, and even the one that Texas Toast has is a little different in shape and all that. But check out Jay Nelson if you want to see a guy that really knows how to paint. He's the guy who works in the Fender Custom Shop. And so you can see here that I whitewashed this. This is part of the recipe. One thing I did that I shouldn't have done was I shot a coat of sanding sealer on this, and they didn't say anything about that. I just said use a very thin wash coat of white and then do a wash coat of your other color, which is kind of a cream to yellow kind of color. The original ones were actually more like the blonde that you would see on 1950s furniture. So I'm gonna take you out here. I don't know why I did that. Maybe just to keep you from getting dizzy. I have my magic box of colors and things here, and I've made myself happy with this color, which is kind of hard to tell on the pot here, but that's going to be the color that goes on. It's going to be another wash coat, maybe just a little thicker. Let's go back to the booth for a second. I'll show you why. You can see all the grain that's exposed here. Maybe you can't in this light, but there's a lot of grain that is showing. Normally you would do your grain fill first, but with this particular recipe you do the paint first, and then you fill over that and wipe off all your excess, and then you clear over all that. So I'm actually going to let this sit a while because they recommend letting it sink in overnight. But I already had the pot with the white in it, and I just added to the pot to make the yellowish color. So I don't want to let that sit overnight. And it's just lacquer. It might last. I'm not really sure. But we'll let this go for another hour or so. It's already been maybe 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half since I shot this. So it is going to sink in a bit anyway. So I'm not really, well, if you can see the size, maybe you can't see the size of this booth. Let me close the door because that'll give you the full effect. Okay, I'm jammed between the guitar and the door here. And as you can see, it's just clear roof sheeting down the walls. I have a shelf here that the corner right there is where that box of colors goes, but this is all my automotive type finish up there. I'm using just straight lacquer on this one. I have hooks for the guns and a hook for a bag of rags and more cups for the guns down there. Anyway, not trying to make this a how-to, but just wanted to kind of show you the layout. I don't think I've used this since I built it, so this is the first time. And so my compressor is right outside. My hose connects on either side of this nipple. From inside I can disconnect this here and the hose from the outside. And when that has the cup on it, it just sits right there. And yeah, that's it. So I'm going to go away for a while and then come back and shoot that other color. Anyway, what I was going to say about that was probably not going to try to set the camera up in here while I'm spraying, just because it's so tight. When I have the spray gun in my hand and this thing is around here, it's pretty. I'm right here with this gun. It's very hard to get. I don't have a lot of room in here. It's going to be real fun shooting acoustics, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I might just hang the acoustics from the lid here. And and I have the whole filtered exhaust fan right there, which has a switch on the outside of the booth, which I turned off because you wouldn't be able to hear anything. All right, and here is the LPJ with the yellow on it. Maybe I should turn the light out. Next up will be grain fill. I'm going to try turning the light out and see if that's any different. Less glory. Should be less glare. So it may not be. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so there it is with kind of in the light, standing in the doorway here. It's creating that shadow. Huh. Oh, my camera. Okay, great. So, but you get the idea. So there it is. Next step will be grain filler. All right, here we are again, folks. So this was sprayed yesterday afternoon, kind of late-ish, and it's been 24 hours or better since that happened. And this is the color. I'm really happy with it. I think that color is very, very close to what the originals were. So I've mixed up oil-based grain filler. This happens to be Oxford. I'll bring it back here actually into the range. And this is the sides of the acoustic guitar, which is mahogany. And I smeared some of it on there. And I think that maybe just the oil that made it, just highlighted the red in the wood, because this is not, uh-oh, I don't want to touch it. Add some stain on the side of the can. This is not that red looking. So we'll see. They recommended in the recipe that it was kind of a red mahogany, and that was the stain I used in there. But this is natural filler, and I think I already said Oxford. But the point is, it says it on top of there. There we go. The point is that they said make a slurry out of it. Well, this was already pretty thin. There's a lot of oil in the can. I had to stir it all up and get it to do that. So I think just going to do it. Oil-based doesn't dry like water-based does. And so I'm pretty sure it's mixed up pretty well. There was some things floating around in here, though. And I'm not sure. I might have scraped something off the can. I don't know how old this can is. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. This was part of the tool and product score that I made off that other guy that sold me a bunch of his stuff. And this is a complete Oxford rattle can kit for Seafoam Blue. But they do have this this filler included in the kit, and I'm going to use it on this. And if I like it, then I know where I can get some more. Grain filling always seems to be a hassle, no matter who you talk to. Yeah, so, and this is very wet, which is pretty okay with me, actually, because I want it to get down into the grain, and I don't want to work hard. So the wetter, the better. Already where I've gone over grain and it's starting to dry a little bit is more difficult. I'm going to just smear it all over everything. And they recommend squeegeeing or whatever. And, well, I'm a rag kind of guy. If I had an old credit card or something, I would use that, maybe. But I'm kind of liking the result that I'm seeing here. You probably can't see much of anything. And if you notice, I am pushing this across the grain. And yeah, this will probably take a couple go-arounds, maybe even more. But once I get to a point, I will put a little bit of paint thinner on a rag and wipe the top off. Or just get a clean rag. I don't want to leave this brown on the surface. I don't really want to have to sand the surface. If I have to do this a couple times, I'm not worried about that. One thing about building flat guitars is they're a little easier. You can see I'm dragging it off, and it's looking pretty clean where I've got it completely pulled off. So I'll probably just get a clean sock out of the rag bag and pull this off. Let it dry a bit. This is, like I said, it's oil. It's not like it's going to cake on here and be impossible to get off, because worst case scenario, I do just put some paint thinner on my rag and it'll clean up. And it probably would take a little bit out of the grain if I do that. But like I said, a couple times. So I'm actually kind of digging that. I was a little bit worried about where I put that center strip in the middle of this thing, but it looks a little different than the rest of the top, but it doesn't look out of place. And if I hadn't said anything, nobody would probably even notice. Okay, I'm going to grab another rag and just get that part rubbed off. I store this stuff in my spray booth now, which is kind of the dust-free area of the shop. It's the first time I've had a dust-free area. All right, didn't I just make that look easy? Check that out. I'm gonna move the can. So that's the effect that we're after with this product. All right, I've got chunks laying here. Came off the rag. I'll throw them back in there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish the top of this thing. I might bring you back in. Maybe I'll bring you back in if I have to do a second coat. I probably will do a second coat. All right, folks, here's a progress report on this Les Paul Jr. TV Yellow. I've had I flash coated it, which was a mistake. We talked about that. Sanded that back as much as possible. I then shot the yellow, and then I grain filled with the Oxford oil-based natural. I added some red mahogany transtant to it. And let's back up a little bit here. Well, let's go in a little bit. Once I started shooting clear, which I shot a wash coated clear to begin with, didn't really like the contrast. It was a little bit too much contrast, so I took and I mixed a very, very thin kind of wash coat. I should say I added get this here where you can see it. I added some really some thinner to the lacquer. I'm sorry, I can't talk and do anything at the same time. So, and I just did a pretty light coat over everything, which really took the edge off of the grain. You can see, hoping you can see the color there. Let's roll it over. Some of it's showing here. Unfortunately, between the low spots, which are shiny, and the actual color, it's not translating very well. I really like the look of the yellow that I ended up with. I think that I'm very, very close to the examples I've seen personally. Now, this is it under, this is the edge. This is it under lacquer that hasn't been dulled. And it will be shiny in the end, so it'll probably look more like this brighter yellow than the sanded yellow. See the difference? Anywho, so since then I have shot, I did the wash coat. I've shot 2 more coats on that same day. The next day I sanded it back as flat as I dared. And I still had a lot of pores that were sunk, so it wasn't completely filled yet. I've shot 3 more coats on it and sanded it back, and I still have areas that aren't, that are sunk into the grain. So I don't think the grain filler stays in the grain as well once you lacquer it, because it doesn't have a porous surface to cling on to. So I think a lot of that just wiped back out. So consequently, I still have, even though I did it twice, so I still have some filling to do, and I'm just filling it with lacquer at this point. So I'm going to put about 3 more coats on and then flatten it again. So this has been flattened. I flattened it with 400 grit. The Mirka Gold 400 grit. It's just a disc, but I didn't do it on a sander. I did it manually on my Asolux block. Block that size, you really do get it flat. So anyway, I'm going to sand the edges yet because you can see they're still bright, shiny. And then I'm going to start my some more coats on this thing. I think today I have something to do later, but today I'll be able to get a couple coats on this before I have to go away.